Hello. In this tutorial, we're going to learn about text string in Python. So let's move to the screen. So here you will, at the end of this particular tutorial, be able to learn about literal text string, how to represent text string in Python, and how to perform different operations on Python. For example, how to be able to extract various parts of a string, how to slice a string, how to splice a string, and all other operations that are provided to us in Python. So this is what you will learn in this particular tutorial. So let's begin. The first thing is what you call a string literal. So for example, if I were to say a is equal to hello, this is a string literal. If I were to print this particular thing, you can see that I get hello. You can see the special feature of this particular output is that it has a single quote. This basically indicates that this is in a string. Now I can, instead of using double quotes, I can also use single quotes. But remember, we cannot have a single quote here and a double quote here. They both have to be the same at the end of the string and at the start of the string. This will also give you the same output. In the same way, what we can do is that, for example, if I were to put two more single string options here and two more here, and then if I were to say in the next line, if I were to go and print world, you will see something strange will happen here. You will see there is a particular escaping character here, slash n, backslash n will be printed here. What does it mean? If I were to print this particular thing, if I were to print this n, you see what happens here. They are both presented on different line. So when we use something like these three quotes, they can be single quote or they can be double quote as well. For example, I can just use double quotes here, three double quotes here and three double quotes here. And if I were to try and print it, I will get the same option on different line. How is it useful? For example, if I were to, say, for example, print something like this here, instead of hello world, if I had something like, uh, let's take an HTML tag, for example, and I will to say hello world. And then if I were to say, okay, so this thing ends here. And then I go to next line and I were to say click. And then I will to say click ahref is equal to. And then if I were to put something in here as well, something like http and then python.com, and you see what I'm getting at. Very soon you will see the output of all those things here, and I'll say here, and then uh, print it like this. So now if I were to go ahead and print uh, a over here, you will see what happens. You see what I get? I get this option where on the first line I have this h1 tag, which is very much available to me, and then here I get click ahref and this particular line. So what we're basically seeing here is that it is basically put into different lines. If you were to use these three quotations mark, then the content will be printed on different lines as you're seeing here being printed. Okay, so this is what you can actually do. Let me give you another example here, and this is an example that I can just simply give it to you here. For example, instead of this, if I were to put something like here, look at this here, and then if I were to print this thing, okay, you see this? Okay, so this is what you actually get when you print using these type of options. So now there's other ways of printing things as well. We go into a different block, code block now. We go into a fresh code block now. So for example, if I were to say something like um, base year is equal to 2020. Now if I want to print something like that, and if I were to say a principal value was um, 0.23456, and now if I were to print it in a proper way, let's do it. Let's go full screen right now. Okay, so here I am. Let's in the full screen mode. So now as you can see here, that what I can do here is okay, stretch it even more so that everything is more clearly visible to you people. And okay, so here it is. So if I were to, for example, go in here, and if I were to say print, okay, so if I were to go in here and if I were to say print, and then if I were to use something called an F operator, something like this, and then within quotes, for example, if I were to take single quotes, I have this option, and then I can say principal, which is the value that I want to be printed here. I will say principal. And then what I will simply say is that uh, I will just put uh, plus say 1000, okay, something like this. And I'll just say something like this, and this greater option, which will basically mean that it will be right aligned, and 3D. So minimum three places of decimal will be visible here. And then for the principal amount, for the base year, I can just say this has to be base year. And then I'll just go here and I'll just say principal. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and say principal, and it will be just, let's see, we're going to just like this, point 2f, okay. And then if I were to print this, let's see what happens here. You can see that uh, this particular option is printed here. Plus 100 I have added, so it basically adds 100 to 2020 and print the option. And then it says two values, 0.23 will be printed here. If I had to say something like, if I had mentioned three values here, then minimum of three values would have been printed here, 235. So this is one of the ways. Now this can also be done in other ways. For example, if I were to comment this thing out, so let's see what are the other ways it can be printed and formatted way. So what we can do is that we can also use what you call a percentage sign, and also single quotes. So for example, format operator we can use. So just like earlier, we will just simply, this time around, we will say the first element will be something like 3D here, which was we had mentioned earlier, and the second element will be the first one, and we can just simply say that it will be like we had mentioned earlier as well, 0.3f. Okay, so what we need to do here is that after mentioning that this is the particular format that we actually want here to be presented, then what we can do is that after this we can go and say dot format, and then we can mention those particular values that are going to come in the zeroth place and the first place. Year, base year, what we call base year here, and then principal value, which is principal value. So let's print this thing, and you will see we get absolutely the same option. Instead of 0.3f, we can do 2f. So the difference is, over here we mentioned whatever we wanted to do in the same curly braces. Here inside of the curly braces we mentioned what the format we want, and then we use the format modifier to create the opportunity or the particular format in which we wanted this thing to be printed. Now let's go ahead and find out another way. We can also do it like print, and then this time around we are going to use the percentage operator. We will just simply say percentage, and then we will say 3D, and this is what it is going to be. And then we will just give a space percentage, and we will just say 0.2f. Here we need to mention 0. Okay, and what we'll do after that is that once again we will use this percentage sign here instead of dot, and then we will just simply say base year and comma principal. So this is what we will do here. I will just comment out the this particular thing here, and then if I were to run it, let's see what happens. We get the same output. Instead of 0.2f, we can give 3 as well. So I can run it as well. So you can see we can publish these strings in various ways: single quote, and then three quotes, double quote, and we can also use this, curly braces, and we can create the format inside the curly braces, then dot format. Then we can use this percentage operator in order to create whatever output that we want or that we are looking for. So these are the various ways in which we can actually print these strings. Now let's look at some of the methods that we can apply on a string. So methods we can apply on strings. So let's look at some of the methods you can apply on it. So for example, if you want to find out the length of the string, so let's say if we say a is equal to hello world, and we want to find out what is the length of this particular string. So we can just simply set the length keyword here, and we can just use a. So this will give us the length of this particular string, 11. Okay, that's very good. Now suppose you want to access what is at a specific location. So the string, for example, this is h is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like that, this h is at 0 position, e as its first position, and the first l is at the second position. So let's see what we can do to access it. So we will just simply say a, and we know that l is at the second position, so we will just print like this, and then we will just simply say print b. So you will see what happens now, not bool, uh, b. Okay, so we just print it, and you see the L comes into the picture. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. What is at the fourth position? It is the O. So let's see what's printed here. It should be O. So we print it and it is O. So O is printed here. So this is how we can actually print it. Now what happens if we take something in minus? So let's do it. Let's see what happens. What will be A minus? Let's see what happens. Okay, it gives D. So it basically gives the last character when we use minus. What happens if we say minus 2? Let's see what happens. Okay, it gives the second last character. What happens if we say something like 28? So now let's see what happens. It gives an error that it is out of range. So this is very much understandable. But what minus will do is that it will basically start from the end character of that particular string. Okay, now suppose what we want is that we want to slice in a string. So if we were to say slice in a string, uh, this operation is basically, suppose we have a string a here, then what we can do is that I is to j. So this will be from the first position to the last position. So let's say what will happen if I were to try from 3 to 8. Now if I were to say 3, and then if I were to say 8, and then if I were to say uh, c is equal to 3 is to 8, and if I were to print c, so this will give me the sliced string. So let's see what happens here. So it gives the low wo. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So that's right. 3, 4. This is the 5. And then 6, 7. So something very interesting happened. The last character is not included. So the last character is not included. So slice will only give you from 3 to 7. Actually, if we say 3 to 8, we will get from 3 to 7. So this is something that you need to keep in mind very strongly. Now what happens if I were to say something like from 0 to say 5? What happens now? Let's see if we print it like this, we get hello here. Okay, so we get this hello option here printed. I will just comment out the about to one. Okay, so you can see it much more clearly. Now this thing can also be written simply as colon 5. Again, if I were to try this, okay, you get hello. Now what happens if I were to say something like 5 to 0, or for example 5 to nothing? Okay, and then this will give me from 5 onwards, everything from 5 onwards. Okay, uh, let's give it a try. So what happens is that I get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the fifth value. So basically when I say 5 onwards, it basically 5 is in itself is a blank space. So the space should have been there, but the space is not there. What if I were to say something like 6? So let's see what happens now. Okay, so again I get 6 words. So now basically what happens is that, what if I were to say 7 onwards? So let's run it. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it begins from the seventh character and it goes till the very end. So this is what it does basically for you. Now what we can also do is that, for example, what will happen if I were to use something like minus 2? What happens now? So let's print it. So now see, it basically starts from this particular position from the end and then goes in the opposite direction. Now what if we were to say something like this, minus 2? Now what happens? So let's see, hello world. So it basically goes from the beginning till the last two characters. So it basically ignores the last two characters. If I were to make it 3, then it will ignore some more characters here. Okay, so this is how we actually, uh, carry out the slicing and there are some characters. So for example, we can use other characters as well. For example, we can say um, a dot ends with, and we can basically use these operations. So we can say a dot end with, and we can find that particular value, and we can say something like world, and then we can say it start at first and end at 9. So let's see what it does. There we say it basically returns uh, whether the string ends with the prefix. So there is no particular prefix between 1 to 9 that basically uh, checks a string which ends with prefix. So this particular prefix means the starting word. So if I were to say hello, and so okay, so then I run it. Let's see what happens. So again it says false. Or if I were to say simply ends with and world, let's see what happens now. So it says true. So if I were to use a particular string here, and if I want to check if it actually ends with this particular word, then it will be giving you this particular option of true and false. What about if I were to just say a part of that particular thing? Well, it will say, yeah, it ends with LD. What if I were to say RT? Let's see what happens now. Well, it does not end with LD. Now, if we are whether it ends with D, let's give it a try as well. So yeah, it says basically, yeah, this is true. And what we can also do is that a dot find. Okay, we can also use a dot find. So for example, if I want to find first occurrence of D, let's see what happens. It will give me the index position of that particular character: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So D is indeed at the 10th position. Now a dot replace. So for example, if I were to try a dot replace, let's for example, I want to replace D with E. So let's see if I were to run it, what happens now. Again I say hello worldly, so it basically replaces D with E. Now if I were to split this thing, like for example, if I were to split it by a dot split, and if I were to say split it by what you call space. Okay, so if I were to just try and split it with this space, so what will I get now? I get two different, I get basically this is a list in Python. So I basically this list being split into two different strings here. So this is what split can do. So suppose if we have, like these spaces as well, so I can use a strip. So I can use a strip, for example, and I can just, for example, let's see what happens. If I were to say, there you go, I don't get anything like here. If I were to not to do this, or if I were to say, for example, strip of say colon, and then if I were to try and print it, you see that there is this space here. But if I were to strip of this particular space, it will strip of any extra space on both the side. And there you see, you get a proper string. So this is what strip does. If I were to use something like this and give it an improper argument, then it will not work, as you can see. So it works actually. So you can see that you just have to mention space over there. So it will just strip on the basis of comma and space as well. Now let's just do this. This time around it won't work. Okay. So these are the various functionality. We can also concate various strings together. So just a prefix, we saw there is the ends with method, there is the method of what we call the find method, there is a lower method, replace, split, starts with, strip, and then there is also this split method, which is, we can, for example, use to uh, maximum number of splits to perform. So yeah, what was it? A dot split. And then if I were to split on the basis of this space, then you will get two values here. Here you saw we already have this is a couple of spaces, so we got these empty strings here. So this is something which is very interesting. We can basically split on this basis as well. And so now if we sort of move further, we can combine these things as well. But I will actually cover this in the next chapter, or maybe I should cover it in this chapter as well. So we can also, for example, if I were to go in there and if I were to say a is equal to hello and b is equal to world, and I can just simply print also a and plus b. So let's see what happens now, what we get in the printout here. So let's see, we get hello world printed out. And then what if a was 5 and this was 7? So what happens now? So let's see what happens. So the Python code or the Python interpreter is very intelligent. It is capable of finding out whether we are using a string or whether you're using an integer. So this way you can actually get these values. Okay. But what if this was like inside of this semicolon for quotes, for example, single quote? What will be the output now? So let's see what happens. Well, it gives you an error. So in order to be able to do so, what we can do is that we can typecast this thing. So we can say int of something like this, integer type. We just put it inside of this. Now let's see what happens. Let's give it a try, whether it will work or not. Well, this time it worked. So what we can do is that we can typecast the values. So in this way, they can actually work together. Now, if we were to try and, if there is a value which is a string type, we can use, sort of a string operator, something like that. If I were to say something like, 5, and then if I were to say something like this here, so now I want this thing to be in the string format and to be concatenated to print 57, so it prints 57. So you can basically typecast these things, and they can get you the job done. And they both create, there is also something called, we can also use repr here instead of a string, but we normally use a string, so we are not going to go into that. And so these are the things, they both create a string, and output is very much the same. And when debugging, we can basically use repr to produce output because it shows us more information about a value type. And the format function is basically used to convert a single value of a string with a specific formatted applied. For example, we can also use something like x is equal to 12.87987, and then what we can do is that we can say format, and we can say x, and then we can just simply say 0.2f. You can say like something like this, and then if I were to sort of print it, I will get it in a specific format. I just need to get rid of this thing because this is not making any sense. So if I were to just kind of print it, you will see we get it. So this is what the format is able to do. So we saw a lot of the stuff over here. For example, we began with single quote, which are the literal string. Then we tried and make changes to it by printing it using this f operator, then using the semicolon operator, then using the percentage, uh, you know and which we can use this format. And then we also had various methods: splice, split, slice, split, and so many other things that we can use. And we also in the end saw another format operator. So this is how we can actually use strings. So if you like this video, please do like and subscribe. And I hope you like this video. And if you like this video, please do like and subscribe the channel and continue supporting me. Thank you very much.